We are live in YouTube. Hello, hello. Good morning. My name is Tony from the Fiberology Lab, and this is a coffee chat with Tony. And this is where I come in Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for a few minutes to kind of teach you a little bit about quilting basics. I started this about a month ago, maybe a little over a month now, I guess. And every session I've been doing is just a small piece of the process because I just want to keep it short and simple. And I'm also sharing how I teach when I do my beginner quilting class. So I'm actually going to turn this into a virtual beginner quilting class here in the new year. And I think in January we're going to change up the name a little bit, and we're going to start some new things at this time in YouTube, and I'll be also putting it back on Facebook. But for right now, this is exclusive to YouTube, so that's kind of cool. So come on in, good morning, and say hi so I can say hi back at you. I can't say it enough. I appreciate your time because I know time is valuable. My time is valuable, and so is yours. So I'm grateful that you find value in my time by showing up live and then watching on the replay. Thank you so much if you're watching on the replay. So today, as I wait for people to come in, um, let's just get a rundown what's going on in the lab. I do a weekly lab report. I did that yesterday at 10ish on Mondays. That's when I tend to do it. And we've got lots of virtual shop hops going on. If you get our emails or if you follow our Facebook page, I post those every day because that way you always know what shop is up. We are doing 12 at 12 virtual shop hop. We are doing quilt must virtual shop hop. And then we're doing the lucky sevens, which is another virtual shop hop. So just go to our Facebook page, check your email, and see all that information there. The other thing we got going on this week is Stitched Up Stories. So if you type in stitched up stories.com, you'll find out that we have another designer this week. It's Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And what it is Jen, the owner of the Little Shop of Stitches, hosts this, and she engages with the designer or the designer. She's a fabric designer, but normally sometimes it's pattern designers. She engages with those people and kind of gives us an inside process for us who just admire that because I have no desire to design fabric. But it's kind of cool to see how everybody else goes through the process of designing. So check that out. You can sign up at Stitched Up Stories. It's $20, and then you have a week to review the video. Say something came up, somebody came into town, and you couldn't watch it live. Jen sends you a link to watch it again for 7 days, and it's kind of fun. I think it's fun. So that's coming up this weekend. Today is our back into live selling on Tuesdays. I normally do it. I normally did it in the evenings, but I'm going to go back to the afternoons. So I misquoted myself. It's not at 2. It is at 3 p.m. Eastern time zone on Tuesdays that I will start doing some live selling. So you can find that in the app, in our Instagram, or on our Facebook page. So that's just a little bit what's going on. Let's talk a little bit. This is going to be short and sweet because it's a rinse and repeat. So technically we are on session 14. If you are a member of our forums and you join the coffee chat forum, a group in our forums, you'll see I have posted finally. I have posted all the PDFs for the last couple sessions and including today's. So today's is session 14. What we're doing is the outer borders. And I talked a little bit about this in the last session about how to prepare your borders. So the first borders we did were the 1.5-inch pieces. And then we are now doing 4.5-inch. My goal when I originally designed this for learning to quilt was that it would be small enough that we can use the width of fabric for backing. So keeping that in mind, can you make those borders bigger if you want to? Sure. But then that means you're going to have to piece your backing. But don't worry, I'll talk about that backing process in a couple sessions. So we're going to rinse and repeat. We're going to make sure all our inner border is pressed out. Doesn't matter what direction. I just press them out. And then we measure, measure the 3 points, find that average number, cut our 2 first strips to match that, sew those on, press those out, and do the same process for the last 2 borders. Super simple. So again, repeating the process. Now, the thing about the outer borders and the reason I separate it out is because of directional fabric. Now, my fabric here is not directional. It's kind of going all sorts of ways. But say you have a pattern that is very up and down, very vertical. You want to make sure you're cutting your fabric a little different. if you would like. You don't have to. I've known many people who don't. They find the cheapest, not cheapest, the easiest, the less is more way. So what you could do, you have to think it through. You're going to cut your fabric length of fabric. So when I put the fabric requirements up, I said 1.25 yards. That is in case you have a directional print. I don't know what fabric you picked out. So that's why people always, why do you need so much fabric when you only need to cut 4 strips at 4.5 inches with the fabric, because you don't need as much. Because if you have a border with the direction, you need the length so you can make sure you have enough to do 2 pieces this way and the length of fabric, and then 2 pieces with the fabric. And that is actually written into our PDF. It tells you how to cut for next week's homework. Make sure I put that in there. Yes, I did. No, I printed out the wrong one, but I'll make sure it's in there. But so make sure if you have a directional, you want to cut the length of your fabric. You've cut 2 first. Let me rephrase that. You cut 2 strips with the fabric and the other 2 length of fabric. That way you have the right direction going with your fabric. So that gets a little sticky. So if you have questions about how you're going to cut that, good morning, Miss Denise. You can definitely put that in the group, and I will kind of help you walk you through that. So take a picture of what you're using and post it in the group. Denise is keeping up. I am so impressed with Denise keeping up with this little project. And this is just a little side project. This project would be really good for you to kind of skills and processes with holiday fabric or seasonal fabric. That way you can throw it on the table and be done with it. We will be finishing this all the way out. So the next session, what I'm going to really talk about is marking our top. We're going to mark our top before we actually baste our top. So because this is a beginner quilt, I keep the quilting very simple, but I want it to highlight and look like you're a professional. Again, all about being successful. I want your first quilt to be successful. So we do not do stitch in the ditch. And I'll talk about that later. But we will be marking it with X's across our quilt to make it have we call that crosshatch effect. So, and they're pretty big. They're like 4 inches across. So we'll have fun with that tomorrow. I'll show you how my other camera's set up. I'm going to show you how I mark, some tools, because there's lots of different marking tools, and the best way to kind of do that. So today's session is super simple. We're going to rinse and repeat. We're going to get that final border on, press it, and put it aside until next week when we'll be marking it. Now, I did have homework in there for you. Cut your binding. We haven't even talked about binding yet, but I'll talk to you about that after we do our basting. So because it's going to take you a little time to quilt, so I figured I'll throw binding in between that, and we'll get you all cut up. So we don't have that many more sessions left. We will wrap this up before the end of the month, and then I'm going to throw in some extra bonus stuff for this month. And like I said, in January, I've got scheduled out some new things. So we've had questions about how to do miter borders. We've had questions about paper piecing and applique processes. So I'm going to kind of focus this time more on technique building and not so much on coffee and chat. So I have to think of a new name, or a adjusted name. I'm thinking some of them. So maybe something you can think about too. So that, again, short and sweet today. Just get that last border on. You can go into the group, go see all the other sessions. Again, if you have directional fabric, you want to cut a little differently. And I know a lot of people they'll say the best way to cut your border fabric is on the length. What that means is you're cutting it with the grain because there's no stretch. And that is true. And that works for some people. And again, it's your choice. Just know that if you cut it with a fabric, you're going to have stretch and they're going to be pinning. That's why I stressed it last time. Pin your borders on, because you don't want them to be wonky. You don't want to have a trapezoid when you're done with your quilt. But especially if you're doing like a queen size quilt, that's where a lot of people buy the length of fabric, because it stabilizes the center of the top because there's so much give in it because of the seams. So just things to think about as you're planning and working through your quilting project. This one's super simple and keeping it small, so that's why I don't stress about it. But I know I'm going to have people say, well, I was always told to cut it lengthwise. And you totally can. If you want to have a more stable border, I would do it for your larger quilts, like your queens and your kings. Even if you have to piece it lengthwise, that's fine, but the length doesn't stretch. And that's the big thing. So, and that's why a lot of long armors prefer you to do it on the length as well. So, all right, guys, that is our Tuesday coffee chat for Tuesday. Tomorrow I'll be back on how to mark our top. If you have any questions, just post them in the coffee chat group in our Mighty Mint Networks, or you can email me at info@fiberologylab.com. You guys have a great Tuesday. I will be back live in the app, on Facebook, on Instagram, everywhere else at 3 p.m. Eastern today, because I have some fun new stuff to show you. So you guys have a great one. And remember, we are friends, fibers, and fun.